Donald Trump is the president, which just goes to show that if life ever feels hopeless, remember, America once looked at every available option and decided to vote for this guy. Although Trump did win the election, he has not exactly won the favor of Americans. That's right, Harvard has left Trump stunned as they've refused to follow any of his orders. How's it going? My name is Hunter Avalone with Occupy Democrats. Welcome back to another video. Now, Trump recently sat down with the president of El Salvador, and he also engaged in some really hostile arguments with the press.
Well, Mr. President, you said that if the Supreme Court said someone needed to be returned, that you would abide by that. You said that on Air Force One just a few days ago, and they said that it must be facilitated.
Why don't you just say, isn't it wonderful that we're keeping criminals out of our country? Why can't you just say that? Why do you go over and over? And that's why nobody watches you anymore. You know, you have no credibility. Please, go ahead.
President Trump.
You can be in favor of getting criminals out of this country, but also be against the idea of deporting random people without due process. Even more so, the Constitutional Court has reasoned that aliens physically present in the United States, regardless of their legal status, are recognized as persons guaranteed due process of law by the 5th and 14th Amendment. So even if somebody were here illegally, undocumented, they still are owed due process. Trump ignored due process and sent an innocent man to an El Salvador prison. That's the major problem here. Nobody wants criminals to be running around freely in America, but people do believe in due process. Even more so, as a perfect metaphor for the Trump administration, J.D. Vance just tried to lift the CFP championship trophy, and it literally fell apart in his hands. Yeah, honestly, it really makes a lot of sense, you know? The way that trophy broke down, it's the exact same way the economy is breaking down within Donald Trump and J.D. Vance's hands. But Trump's woes are not over yet, because recently, multiple different U.S. businesses sued the Trump administration to block the tariffs, saying that trade deficits are not an emergency. Yeah, Trump just cannot stop dealing with legal issues, probably because he keeps breaking the law. And now for the moment you've all been waiting for, Trump has been left stunned as Harvard announced they are refusing to comply with Trump's demands.
In a major rebuke to the Trump administration, Harvard University has rejected demands to eliminate its diversity, equity, and inclusion programs, standing firm even as $9 billion in federal funding hangs in the balance. The Trump White House had ordered Harvard to scrap DEI initiatives, overhaul hiring and admissions practices, and impose ideological screening for international students. But Harvard President Alan Garber fired back, declaring that no government has the right to dictate what private universities teach or who they hire. This bold move is the latest example of Americans and major American institutions standing up to Trump's attempts to rewrite the rules on free inquiry and diversity. Harvard's lawyers emphasized that the administration's demands violate the university's First Amendment rights and overreach the government's authority. As the Trump administration ramps up its crackdown on higher education, freezing funds for Columbia, Cornell, and Northwestern, university leaders say they're preparing for the worst but refusing to abandon their core values.
Yup. Once again, we see Donald Trump being challenged by everybody, because everybody can recognize that Trump has no respect for the law or the Constitution. DEI also greatly benefits innovation, and this has been demonstrated by data time and time again. But then again, I'm not that surprised, because Trump doesn't seem to care at all about the facts. He only really cares about his feelings.